Hello, everybody, and welcome to Journeys to the Fringe. My name is Michael Lauria, and I just give you a little bit of background about myself, and then I'll introduce you to my co-host, Paul Anthony Wallis. So I am in Melbourne, Australia. I'm a husband and a father of three. I am a men's coach. I have a brand called Forging Excalibur with a mission to positively impact the lives of 1 billion men around the world. And plus, I do a few other things as well. But these things that we're going to be talking about over the next however long we do this podcast for, hopefully forever, Paul. We're going to be talking about things on the fringe of our awareness or our knowledge, or on the fringe of science. And we're very excited to be bringing this to you. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but I'd like to introduce my co-host, Paul Anthony Wallis.
G'day, I am Paul Wallis, and I am a writer of books. I'm also a father of three and a husband, and I write books on paleocontact, probing the world's ancestral narratives for their insights on human origins and human potential. And I'm looking forward to these conversations with Michael about Journeys to the Fringe, because there have been many times in my life when I've had to go back and give some attention to something that I'd ignored or missed previously. And I find out there's a whole other world opening up as I look into that topic. So that's what motivates me about these Journeys to the Fringe. I think there have been many times in my life when that's happened, and I've written a book every time it's happened. I should say my working roots are in the world of ministry. 33 years in church-based ministry as a church doctor, theological educator, and archdeacon for the Anglican Church in Australia. And if you know me from the Fifth Kind TV or from the Paul Wallis channel, you'll know there's a lot of Journeys to the Fringe that I've made and rethinking and reframing, and I just love that exploration. So, Michael, I'm looking forward to sharing that process with you.
Oh, as am I, Paul. And we connected. We actually connected because I saw one of your YouTube videos that you'd posted, or something on your Facebook page. No, it was a YouTube. It was a YouTube video, and you interviewed somebody around extraterrestrials and more specifically extraterrestrials in the context of the Bible. And I thought, wow, that's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And it always been an interest of mine. These things have always been an interest of mine, a passion, anything to do with extraterrestrials, anything to do with cryptozoology, ancient civilizations, the Bible and the different interpretations of the Bible, and how history has perhaps been rewritten in many ways, or perhaps misinterpreted. And I've always been an avid student in the shadows, if you might say, of all of these things. And of course, life and fatherhood and marriage and work and all of that sort of stuff just got in the way, and I didn't make it a primary focus in my life. And since I've been able to shift focus a little bit, but still maintain focus on what I love to do and what my mission is here in the world, I've learned that we can create space for these discussions, and I can create space for this in my own life as well. And then I had you on my podcast, and we had a magnificent discussion that went for nearly 2 hours, and I was inspired, and I thought, I want to do something with this man. I want to explore the things that have been on my mind and in the shadows of my consciousness for so many years, that I've read about and watched every documentary under the sun and explored, but never actually had conversations with people, because these are not subjects and topics that you can just bring up around a table at a restaurant with family and friends often,
Not most
so
tables, no.
not most tables, but I'm glad that we're starting to occupy the same table now, Paul, and we can talk about some of these things.
Well, we absolutely connected on those topics. Ancient contact, interesting phenomena, what's really going on in the Bible. But I also clicked with your other work in Forging Excalibur, the work that you do with blokes. That had been a significant part of my work in years past. And what I like about what you're doing is that it really is about how we live this life. I mean, yes, it's interesting to talk about fascinating topics, but I love topics where there's a take home. I'm going to do something with this. This is going to inspire me or equip me for my journey. And I find your work with blokes so rooted and so necessary. That was another point where I think we connected.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I'm equally inspired by your work. I mean, the books that you've written and your YouTube channels, they're so rich in content and conversations and I think you were even interviewed by Erik Von Daniken just not long ago, were you? And
Yes, he
yeah,
interviewed me last year, and I interviewed him the year before.
yep. See, that's a man that I've been following for many, many years, and he's almost like an icon in that field of research, you know. And for you to be connected with him, that was quite a scoop, you know, to be able to.
Well, Eric had been in my head from when I was about 11 years old, when I read his book, Chariots of the Gods.
Yep.
And the work I'm doing now is really comes back to what you were saying just now. We have lived very busy lives where we just haven't had time to drill down into the things that, oh, that's interesting. And
Mm,
then through happenstance, circumstance, gift of the universe, we both had the opportunity to do that. And so I was able to go back to what was it in Erik Von Daniken that had grabbed my attention when I was 11? What were the questions that were still not resolved
mm,
from those explorations back then? And so he's been an example of me going back and thinking, do I need to give a second hearing to this person? Or do I need to listen to someone I haven't listened to before? Or these people that I wrote off as fringy people or lunatic fringe or heretics, do I need to give them a second hearing? Because, you know, history is so layered, and there's the top layer that you read, that you see on the news. When you're in a rush, that's what you absorb. When you slow down a bit, you then begin to ask, what was really going on there? And
mm.
that's part of the energy of our conversations that we're going to be having in Journeys to the Fringe, I think.
Absolutely. And we just the day before yesterday, we interviewed Todd Standing, who's a Canadian Sasquatch researcher, but he's so much more than that, isn't he? He's not just a Sasquatch researcher. He's so much more than that, which people will discover when they watch our interview with him. But that was a really good, a really good interview to kick this off. And we're going to be
Yeah.
talking to so many amazing people around the world with so much wisdom around so many things. So some of the topics, I'll list off some of them, and then you can probably cover off on some others, Paul. But there's Bigfoot and Sasquatch in Canada, Yowie in Australia, all the same thing essentially. And then we're going to probably be talking about things like extraterrestrials and UFO visitations, but more in the context of ancient civilizations and the Bible. I'd love to expand on this discussion and speak with someone around all of that as well. Interview someone around that, and we might even go into other cryptozoological, phenomena such as chupacabra and Mothman and things like that as well. But there's a lot more. There's a lot more depth to this as well. What else do you think we can
Well,
talk
I'm
about?
fascinated by the question of what is consciousness
Yep.
and what are we capable of?
Mm,
And I reckon that you could ask anybody, have you ever experienced something uh, that you couldn't explain? I think almost everybody would have a story to tell. And some of those stories are about things like flashes of remote viewing, flashes of precognition, flashes of telepathic connection that suggest that you and I might be capable of a bit more than we generally engage with on a day to day basis. So, exploring who we really are, what we're
mm.
capable of, what's the bigger picture that we're all a part of, those are some directions I'd like to explore.
Absolutely. And these things are all intermingled, aren't they? Really,
Oh,
because
they're
when we
all
think about
connected.
they
Yeah.
really are because, we've had a brief discussion. We won't go into it too much because this is an introduction, but we've had brief discussions around how, there's allegedly we were somehow manipulated with on a DNA level um, hundreds of thousands of years ago. And prior to that, our capacity, we were using much more of our brains. We were able to connect with intuition, higher source, and we were capable of physical, mental, emotional feats that we believe we might ascribe as superpowers these days. But it's alleged that we were capable of those things back then before we were genetically altered. So it's going to be some very, very interesting, deep discussions. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And these topics are so connected. When I started getting into the theory of paleo contact and writing Escaping from Eden, I began to think, oh my goodness, this could be a book about everything.
Yeah.
And Journeys to the Fringe could be that, but I guess there's an organizing theme, isn't there? Which is we are exploring the journey of life.
Yep.
And we're taking time to pause at things that in the normal rush you might just pass by. But we're
Yep.
pausing there because we found some treasure there.
Absolutely. And I think fundamentally human beings are very curious creatures, aren't we? And we're curious about things, but we don't always spend the time on exploring them deeply and you know, diving into those rabbit holes and really trying to understand what's in there. So I'm very much looking forward to our journeys to the Fringe together, Paul, and who knows where this will end up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for watching, everybody, or listening if you are. And we will see you on the first episode of Journeys to the Fridge with